Hi, I'm Tim Box. I'm an anxiety specialist. Welcome back to my channel. In this video, I'm going to be answering the very common question of how do I stop constantly scanning myself for any signs of anxiety? So I've been seeing clients for around 13 years now, one-to-one, and this genuinely is one of the most common questions that I get asked. How do we stop that constant self-scanning, checking in with our body, trying to find signs of anxiety, or should we say trying not to find signs of anxiety, but inevitably finding some? Well, the answer to this one is probably a lot simpler than you might expect. The first thing to understand here is that you are scanning for anxiety because a part of you perceives anxiety itself to potentially be some kind of threat to you. This is very much when we perceive anxiety to be an illness or a disorder or something that is in some way a malfunction in our mind or in our body. Yeah, it's a threat, so we've got to pay attention to it. We can't just ignore those sorts of things. So the fact that you're paying attention to this stuff, it kind of makes sense. Your conscious attention will always go towards the thing that you currently feel is the most important thing to pay attention to. And of course, any potential threat is right up there, high up on the scale of things that we need to pay attention to. And this is what happens in our life. Yes, we have day-to-day things that might distract us from how we feel anxiety-wise, but as soon as we complete one thing, our focus inevitably goes straight back onto, okay, how do I feel anxiety-wise? Am I having an anxious day? Do I feel bad right now? And that's simply because right now, your anxiety levels and your perception of where they are is really, really important. So it's only really the incredibly functional, focused, this is important right now stuff that distracts you from it. As soon as that's done, your focus goes straight back onto how anxious you feel. So you might say, okay, so is it distraction that is the answer here? Do we distract ourselves away from anxiety with other things, just keeping ourselves super busy all the time? And no, that's not really the answer. If we're attempting to distract ourselves away from anxiety because anxiety is the horrible thing that we just don't want to pay attention to, then all we're doing is reinforcing that idea that anxiety is a problem or is the monster that we're desperately trying to escape from. And let's be clear here. It isn't that anxiety sits there burning like a fire just to the side of our peripheral awareness, and then we might hopefully just be able to ignore it by distracting ourselves from it. That's not it at all. What's actually happening is as soon as we put our focus on how anxious do I feel, we create anxiety that wasn't there before. Anxiety thrives on our attention, and scanning for something that we feel is a threat is an anxious thing to do. It's a bit like searching your house to check there's an intruder in your home. You're going to open every door to every room with a little bit of trepidation, with a higher amount of anxiety than if you were just trying to find your keys. So our job here is not simply to distract ourselves away from any potential anxiety. Our job here is to lower the perceived threat from anxiety so that we just no longer put our focus there. Then when we complete one task that demanded our focus or our attention, we don't automatically go back to, okay, how anxious do I feel right now? Because there's probably other things that are higher up on the list than checking for that stuff. So effectively, you stop scanning for anxiety by proving to yourself that there's no need to do that anymore. So here's what I want you to do. The next time you scan for anxiety and you find some anxiety, and here's the thing, I guarantee that you will find some anxiety because scanning for anxiety is an anxious thing to do. Instead of freaking out about finding a bit of anxiety, whatever that physical sensation is that you associate with feeling anxious, instead of freaking out about it, simply allow it to be there. Every time we find anxiety and freak out about it, then we reinforce that idea that it's something to be afraid of, when in truth, anxiety can't harm, damage, or kill you. There is no actual threat from feeling anxious, no matter how high your anxiety levels are. So whilst it might feel uncomfortable and it might not be the way you want to feel right now, if you allow it to be there, then you send that message to your own mind that there's nothing wrong with this feeling. As a result, what naturally happens is we start to diffuse the potential threat offered by that feeling. So it starts to come down the list of priorities because now there's nothing scary about it anymore. Then, of course, you don't have to try to stop focusing on it. You don't have to do anything to stop self-scanning. You're just not doing that scanning anymore because that bit of your mind that was really, really interested in this because it perceived threat no longer sees anything of importance about how you're feeling from moment to moment. So remember, you're going to feel anxious about things from day to day, from moment to moment, because it's simply your subconscious drawing your conscious focus onto whatever is important. But the one thing we really don't need to feel anxious about is how anxious we feel. And as soon as we fully understand that message at a subconscious level, all of the scanning stops. And what we're essentially talking about in this video is how we avoid creating that anxiety feedback loop that is pretty much what locks us into our anxiety response. I want you to take a look at this next video, which fully explains that concept.